It was roughly September, October of 2019 when I uploaded the last video on this Cherokee. It is now May of 2021. I recorded some footage of other work that I did on this after that and just never got time to put it together and upload it. So I'm going to do that now, this video, and it may be another one or two with the rest of that thrown together. And once that's uploaded, there'll be a follow up with where this Cherokee's at, what had been done that wasn't recorded, because I stopped recording when I did a lot of the work on it. So the next few videos will have this intro and then the footage, and that's all going to be from almost 2 years ago. That'll at least get this caught back up, because I think I've only ever done one other update on this on Comanche Club that's even close to where it's at now. And there's some other projects going on that I think I may do some videos on as well. So we'll get through this old footage and then I'll throw together some newer stuff on where it's at now. So whatever video has this intro is going to be old, almost 2 years old. So here's the exhaust manifold. This is the one that was on it, and of course it has the crack. You can see along there. All 4-liters will have this at some point in their life, and that's no good. So rather than trying to weld it like some people do, I just went ahead and bought another new one. At this point, all of my Jeeps will have a new manifold. Let me just get this open here. There we go. Little different design here. It's got these bellow looking deals on there. Supposed to help with the flex. Supposedly running these, you don't have to run that flex section that people usually run in the downpipe. So I've installed them just with this without the flex section. So far I haven't had any issues. So I'm going to do that with this too. This kit does come with the gasket, the hardware, and the seal for the flange. This is the cheap kit you can get on eBay or Amazon or wherever. I bought the one. I always buy my from Amazon. They're a lot easier to deal with. This one in particular was sold by JDM Speed. I think I paid 65 bucks for it, something like that. You can find the same exact exhaust manifold from other places that different name brand. It's the same manifold and it's like twice the price. So I always just look at the pictures. If it's the same, it's the same. I've also haven't had any issues with these warped. Like sometimes you'll hear aftermarket exhaust manifolds are warped and they don't seal properly on cylinder 6. I haven't had that issue with this style. It's also the correct thickness for the intake manifold. It matches up, so you don't have to make any weird spacers like some of the manifolds require. The only downside to these kits is the gasket it comes with. The gasket itself is fine, but a couple of the holes don't line up. I think it's these two. I have it upside down. I think it's these two here. I think. Don't quote me on that. I had to wallow them out using this on the red truck, just with the Dremel tool. Went in there and just ovaled them out a little bit to make it work. In this case, my Velcro gasket kit for the top end of the motor came with a new intake manifold gasket. I'm just going to use that and stick this one on the shelf. So, but yeah, this kit, it's 60, 70 bucks, 75 bucks, depending on which party you buy it through on Amazon. but it's worth it. It's not that hard to replace. Just throw it on there and you're good to go. It comes with everything you need. So go ahead and get that on there. One other thing to note about these, supposedly they're stainless steel. I don't know if I believe that or not. This, I could see this, not entirely sure. I'm not great at detecting what type of metal pipe is by looking at it. This plate definitely looks like stainless to me, but I don't know if the actual piping is. On my red truck, I actually painted it with exhaust paint. I'm not going to do that on this one, just because I don't want to put the time into it, and I really don't care that much. If it rusts through in 5 to 10 years, I'll put a new one in, but I'm curious to see how well it holds up without any sort of finish on it. Because like I said, they do claim it's stainless steel, and I don't know about the pipes, but the flanges definitely are, from what I can see, but I can't tell the pipes, so I'm just going to put it on there unfinished. So, installing an exhaust manifold on here sucks to do by yourself, but essentially, bolted up down here, you've got your seal in between there. It'll focus. Your seal in between the downpipe flange and the manifold flange. I've just got the top bolt in there right now. I've got to crawl underneath to get the bottom bolt started. Ideally, that seal needs to be as straight as possible, but if it's a little crooked, it's just going to have to be a little crooked, because it's really hard to get to, especially by yourself, to get straight. So I'm going to crawl underneath and see if I can get that other nut on there. Alright, got the bolts started. They're not tight yet. I've always done this in the past. Mount the manifold to the block and then mount the exhaust to the manifold. This time I decided I wanted to try it the other way around, just to see if it was any easier to mount down there first, because it's really hard to get the second nut started. I think with it not mounted to the block and doing what I just did first, it is easier, but it sucks by yourself because you're trying to hold the weight of this while you're getting that other bolt lined up. The first one getting in is no problem, but the second one, getting it started is a real pain. Barely got it started. I had to come up here to actually get it engaged far enough that I'm comfortable not having that nut fall off. But, okay, that's on there pretty good. Yeah, that's good. Let's see here. Yeah. Alright, so I'm going to leave those loose for right now. I'm going to get this put on and then the nuts cinched down to hold this in place, and then cinch that down. The alignment's a little better once this is on the block to actually tighten that, but that was actually easier than having the manifold mounted to the block and then trying to put them in. It still sucks, but if you have an extra hand, it's a lot easier. So grab the gasket here, make sure this is clean. Looks like it. Oh, the fun part, where did I put it? What in the world? Alright, I'm just going to do a side-by-side here. This gray gasket is the one that comes with the exhaust manifold. This is the Felpro gasket that came in the kit that I ordered. Just looking at the two, the droop factor on the gray one, I don't know if you can really tell from that angle, but the gray one droops a heck of a lot more. This one's a lot sturdier. They're both metal in the middle with a layer of this kind of tacky fabric stuff on the outside. The Felpro gasket actually has metal collars around the exhaust or intake ports, exhaust ports. Those are exhaust. Around the exhaust ports. This one does not. Like I said, I've never had an issue with this gasket yet, but in the case of this Jeep, I'm going to use this Felpro gasket because it came with the kit. I'm going to throw this on there, and then we'll see if the holes line up. Now looking at it, I can't tell if there's a backwards and a forwards. Pretty sure this is symmetrical both ways, but okay. And one thing you always want to do is make sure that all your holes line up on your gasket before you go and start tightening stuff down, because if you start getting stuff tightened down and then all of a sudden you find one of your holes is off a little bit or something, you may have to take it all back apart. So double check your holes and everything before you start putting bolts in. In this case, everything lines up, so I'm good to continue. So one issue I had when I took this manifold off of this old head, the studs came out that hold the ends of the exhaust. So what I'm going to do to fix this and get these nuts off, I'm actually going to put the studs back into this head with a little bit of Loctite on there, and I'm going to use penetrating oil to try to get these loosened up. Alright, so I'm going to use red Loctite. This head is pretty well garbage, so I don't really care if these studs never come out again. I will keep this head, however, so that I have a core if I ever need to get a new head. I've actually got an engine block that the block is good from what I can tell. It's got a bad a hole in one of the pistons. It actually came in my blue Comanche, my 90 Comanche. So if I get another head, a good head, I can rebuild that motor and then or mate it with that block and then build it and have a good motor. So that is the plan anyway. It's always nice to have a spare 4-liter on hand. Figure out what size these are. That size. Okay. Now I'm not going too far because what I'm actually going to end up doing is moving these nuts. Now I do want them to move a little bit just to break the threads loose, but I don't want to go so far that it's going to end up causing problems. So I'm going to let this thread lock sit for a little bit. I'm going to also tip this head back down because I want to put some penetrating oil on these studs but I also don't want that penetrating oil to get in there where that Loctite is. So if it was tipped up and I sprayed it, it's going to run down the bolt. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to spray it flat and then tilt it this way and spray it down, and then just let it sit flat, and it should run through these threads. I may actually lift the back end up a little bit, and I'm going to let it sit for a little bit to try to get these nuts off of here. So I probably have nuts in the stash somewhere that would fit this, but I'm lazy and I don't want to go looking for them, so I'm going to waste time doing this first. And really, these nuts aren't in bad shape, so I don't see a reason that I won't be able to get these off. They're just on there a little bit tighter than the studs were. So alright, we'll let that sit for a little bit and probably start working on something else. Alright, so I got that head pushed aside. I'm going to go ahead and take this throttle body off of here. I don't know if I've ever had it off, so I don't know what it looks like under here. I'm sure it's actually, I must have cleaned this. Alright, well, never mind. I'm not going to do that because that's already clean. So every one of these temp sensors that I've ever seen has been broken. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't when they're broken, from what I've seen. Both the sensors that I had, the one that was on the original head and the one that came with the new head, were both broken. So this one is from the new head that's actually on the Jeep. I didn't use this one just because the plug itself has actually got a crack in it. So I'm using the one off of the old head rather than buying a new one. Just use a little crazy glue and stuck it back together in hopes that it works. I'm also going to glue this one back together. If that one doesn't work, I'll try this one and see if it works. Just a little bit of glue around the outside, avoid the metal, stick it back together, and it'll stay on there. No guarantees it's going to work, but I'm going to try it. So I was able to get them nuts off the other studs, threw them on here, and just got them snug. That way this isn't moving around anymore. I'm going to try to tighten up the flange down here from up top. One side's easy to get to, the other side not so much, so we'll see here what I can do. These are 14mm hardware that comes with these cheap manifolds, so can't even, there we go. It's just so awkward getting in here. Of course. I have to do this from underneath. No matter how many times I try, it just never is going to work. When you're bolting up the flange down there, You got to do the top bolt from up top. You got to crawl underneath, do the bottom bolt. It sucks because it's a lot of up and down because you got to kind of tighten them evenly. So you tighten it up here a few turns, go underneath, tighten it a few turns, up and down a few times, and then finally it's on there tight. Shouldn't leak, but so. All right, let's throw the intake manifold on. All right, so intake manifold. I forgot to clean the gasket material off of it. It's actually mostly oil, but you cannot use the brass wheel on this because it is aluminum. It is soft enough that brass will chew through it. This is one that a rubber wheel is about the only way to go, or good scrubbing. Like I said, I don't have one of those rubber wheels, so I'm just going to have to scrub it. So cleaned up the intake manifold. It's not perfect. Like I said, I don't have the rubber scrubber deal. Just clean this up in 2 seconds and be done. Just used a plastic scraper and a nylon brush to kind of work at it a little bit. Some of the spots were built up enough I had to use a razor blade, but with the razor blade it is a lot harder than this aluminum, so if you're not careful it will gouge. So it's clean enough. It's going to seal. This aluminum's soft enough that the pattern in the gasket actually imprints in the aluminum, so it's going to squish quite a bit, and it's going to seal up any spots you can't get everything out of. As long as it's smooth to the touch, it's going to be fine. So when installing these, I generally will just do one bolt to start with and get all of my lines and stuff out of the way here. There's index pins on either end on the head that this actually slots into, so you line those up and it'll kind of sit there, but it'll fall. So I just take one bolt and get it started on there so that doesn't fall. That's good enough. Then we can just take all of our bolts, get them all hand tight, and get this set in place. Now these bolts aren't fun to start in holes, and they're kind of hard to get to in some spots, but use the extension with a swivel on it, and it'll make it easier to access. It's also convenient having this little valley right here to put the bolts into, so you're not walking back and forth to get your bolts. And once they get to a point, they'll get a little snug because you're in this tight area. I'll just grab my swivel on my extension and use it to get them a little tighter. By no means are these going to be tight at this point. They're just getting kind of cinched up. And then there's 4 more up underneath. They'll be opposite of these, so they'll be here where the intake and exhaust meet. So it's opposite corners of your intake runners. I find it easiest to just take it in the swivel, use my finger to kind of hold it, and get up under there and guide it in. Sometimes you can kind of see too from underneath or through the gap where you're going. So I'm a little worried. One of the bolts, I think it's this one down here, this exhaust runner is just barely interfering. I have not had that issue before with these exhaust manifolds. This one, I don't know if that pipe's just a little bit crooked or off center or what, but
It's just barely a hair. You can get the socket on there, kind of, mostly. So we'll see if I can get it tightened down. But these are torqued. They do have certain torque specs. It's 24 foot-pounds for all the bolts except for the end nuts on the studs. Those are 17 foot-pounds for this motor. Pattern is just kind of inside out. There's a certain sequence. It's in the books. For me, that starts with down over here and then slowly alternates and works out. Got it. So after torquing the first bolt down, that's actually the second bolt in sequence, it moved enough that this went on there fine. After tightening it down, this socket kind of got wedged. It was a little bit crooked anyway, so just got in there with the screwdriver, popped it loose, came off, and it's torqued, so we're good.